Now, Helene told us we couldn't have more than 2 to 3 slides, and I broke the rules. I think I have 5. So bear with me. I'll still try to keep it quick because I agree. I would love to hear from other people and get some dialogue going around this. Well, just real quick, I know yesterday Syracuse had a few highlights in the data, but like many cities, we've experienced population loss. And at our peak, we were at 220,000 individuals, and now we're somewhere hovering around 145. That means we housed 220,000 people at one point. So we really struggle with a pretty large oversupply of housing. So in our city, we have about 67,000 total housing units, but we only have about 56,000 occupied households. So that leaves an oversupply, somewhere around 11,000 units. Those units are housed somewhere in approximately 1,500 vacant residential structures. The good news is our vacancy is on the decline, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, but it's still a significant issue that we struggle with throughout all of our neighborhoods, but in particular in the inner city. So a lot of our properties that we have to address around vacancy, I call them snowflakes. Each one has a story. Each one, the solution is never quite exactly the same, but it's complicated. So when we started the grand experiment, and we're incredibly lucky to have such a successful and willing partner in our local land bank, but in the past, we were just seizing properties here and there, but delinquency has always been an issue. So, when we started this sort of experiment, there were about 4,000 seizable properties in the city. But that was only, on the vacancy side, about a third of our vacant structures at that time were seizable. That means 2/3 were tax current. Somebody was paying the taxes. So what do we do about that? So I will talk a little bit about how we work with our land bank and some of those strategies. But really, when we look at tax current property, those are the ones we really struggle with. We don't have a great solution for that always. And some of the programs that we fund or try to coordinate aren't bringing some of our problems to scale. And while we're super grateful, I know Home Headquarters, I see Crystal in the audience. They do the vast majority with some of our other housing partners of the redevelopment of vacant structures, whether it's significant renovation and resale to an owner-occupant, some rental renovation, or also some new construction. We're doing sort of dozens of those a year where we have this problem with hundreds. In the city, we have code enforcement as part of our department, and we allocate about $500,000 a year towards the demolition, usually of emergency structures and court-ordered. That in combination with funding that our other partners are able to secure, we are tearing down somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 structures per year. However, we've identified a significant number of candidates so we're always a little bit behind the curve there. So resources are light, but the partnerships are really strong. So we continue to sort of plow through our seizable inventory and get that in the hands of the land bank, but also work on court orders and other strategies to address those properties that are tax current and causing a lot of issues. So how do we manage this inventory? Our code enforcement department, we have inspectors, we have about 6 inspectors assigned just to vacants primarily. And their job is, they're always monitoring these properties. We have to do board ups all the time. I know a lot of you that are doing this work know the drill. But also what we have them do is score every single property at least once a year. And we use a 1 to 5 scale that we came up with, where a 5 is sort of a pristine property that maybe someone's just in Florida, down to a 1 where it's likely a demolition candidate. There's some sort of structural issue, maybe there was a fire. Somehow we've identified that property is likely in need of demolition. So when we have those properties scored, that is our priority list. We use those scores religiously to figure out how we're prioritizing and strategizing on properties. So our staff are out there every 2 or 3 weeks checking out properties, rescoring them when necessary, but also issuing new violations if anything's arised. So for example, right now we have about 48 ones in the city of Syracuse. Our land bank owns about 21 of those, 16 are seizable, but the final 11 of those ones are in court. So the city's going after what we can do, and we have our partners working on the rest. However, there's almost 300 twos, and that's, every winter gets you closer to a 1. So we also pay really close attention to where those properties are and what status they're in. And of our 2s, only a third are either to the land bank or seizable. That means 2/3 of those are tax current. So what do we do about that? So tax foreclosure has been a real game changer for us so that we didn't have to worry about all of the properties. In essence, we were able to partner with the local land bank and our housing redevelopment partners to really address those properties. But we've just noticed over the years, no matter what we do to a property, we cut the grass, we cut overgrowth, we board up properties, someone just keeps paying that bill. So we really started looking at a program that we wanted to pilot to get people's attention, that the $250 cut and clean wasn't doing it. So with our Zombie 1 grant, we were able to start a blight busting program. And basically, we have the authority to correct any violation that does not go corrected by the owner. So we do cut and cleans on steroids, and that's our blight busting program. So basically, we write scopes of work to address what the exterior, the most blighting influences are, to correct those violations, and we do the work, and then we bill the owner. So far, we've put 20 properties through that process. Half have paid, and of the 10 that paid, I think 8 already sold. The bank finally said, "Oh, geez," and listed those. 2 of them became seizable. But there's another 63 properties that the threat of blight busting got correction. So the blight busting itself, I'm not going to lie to you, it's a huge pain. It is the hardest thing we've done to, I don't know, my municipal friends in the audience, but procurement has been incredibly challenging to get a list of qualified contractors, to get scopes of work, to get them bid out, to get the contract out of our law department, to manage the construction and then pay out. But we have a really good sort of flow going, but it took, I won't lie, it took a really long time to get that process in place, and it certainly isn't for the weak-kneed. But this idea of the threat of now that some of the entities, I should mention, we have a vacant property registry. Many of you may have one. But what we noticed over the years with the tax current properties, someone again just writes that check, and that fee escalates every year. It might be $250 the first year, $500 the second year, and it goes up and up. We've had the registry, I think, since 2012, so some people are at an $800 a year just registry fee. And while that's sort of short-term revenue coming in, maybe $50,000 a year comes in from the registry, folks are just writing the check and not addressing the problem in the property. So we knew that the vacant property registry, while we didn't have the teeth behind on the enforcement side, so blight busting has been one of those ways just to get folks' attention, and I think it's working well. Obviously, we have to continue to leverage investments. Any project we all work on, we call it lasagna work, right? We're always layering financing strategies and other tools that we have at our disposal. But also as we're selecting projects to work on, selecting properties to bring to court, selecting properties to try to get redeveloped, we try to at least connect it with some community asset, with work we've already done, with other investments that are happening, because it is really hard to choose, and it's really hard for us with knowing how detrimental these properties are in the neighborhood, how to attack strategically. So we do another part of our Zombie 1 grant. We formed a vacant property task force. We have an internal group. We meet every single month. It has a law department, codes, has bunch of departments that come together just to talk about prioritizing properties and how have we moved these along every single month. And then quarterly, we try to get together with a resident group that's very interested and engaged on this issue. But for the most part, what we've asked a lot of our neighborhoods to do is help prioritize, rather than tell us of the 50 properties that you're upset about in each neighborhood. Help us rate your top 10. How do we address the top 10? And that's been somewhat successful for us, so that folks feel like their thing is moving along, that there is progress in their neighborhood, and that it's not feeling so overwhelming that we can't address any of their needs. And then I just want to talk a little bit about our sort of proactively identifying projects. I know we all use a lot of data to figure out, which properties we're going to address. But particularly for the blight busting program, we have so many properties that were vacants that were tax current. How do we go about selecting those that to go through this kind of laborious and complicated process. So we really look at the degree of owner occupancy on a block. We'll look at how long the property's been vacant, a bunch of different indicators to sort of score blocks and figure out which properties we can go after. This block also had two zombie properties that it made sense to bid them out at the same time and get the work done at the same time. We've also been looking at the stability of blocks and using a bunch of different metrics to figure out, okay, now what? Now that we either have site control or there's a vacant lot, how do we, direct our investment? So we really try to use a lot of analytics to score all the blocks in the city and to look for those redevelopment opportunities. And it sort of doesn't stop there. We're also, our mayor started an outcome and key result system in which the community can look all the time at what the heck are you doing to stabilize blocks. So one of the areas, I know we talked a little bit yesterday, is around we're trying to increase stability. There's 20 pilot blocks, and I know you all don't know the city of Syracuse, but each of these blocks was identified as high call volume, police, fire, codes. How do we do what we do, at least how can we contribute from codes from vacant property in order to help reduce the number of calls and to sort of stabilize these blocks? And just as an example, we had one property on the 1500 block of East Genesee Street that a couple months ago was 80% in the other direction, and it was just a few problem properties that were causing a lot of the calls. So we really all sort of banded together to figure out what the best strategy was. But every month we go over these blocks to figure out what is going on the 900 block of James Street. Why is the call volume so high over the previous year? What are it's priority one police calls. How do we drill down and see what's going on and then figure out what addresses there are? So this is available to anybody. So the public hopefully is using this tool to measure our accountability in addressing how stable blocks are. And just to leave you with, I know we have a ton of work to do, but I've been doing this for a long time, and I know in the early 2000s, no matter what we did, and at the time we had this sort of large federal allocation for blight removal, no matter what we did, every year we had 2,000 vacants. Every single year it was really discouraging. So we're starting to see a positive decline, and we're really excited to see these trends over a 5-year period, but also recognizing how did we get here? It has been through incredible partnerships. We don't always agree as groups or all the stakeholders, but we all are trying to row in the same direction. And so we're just incredibly grateful for that monthly, weekly collaboration between the nonprofit organizations that I mentioned, as well as whatever municipal departments we can bring in. We really do try to be proactive on our code enforcement and our decision making, but we still have a ways to go there. And really just combining all these tools. I think all of us, we throw spaghetti against the fridge and we try to see what sticks. And I think in particular, what Zombies allowed us to do is to get creative. As many of us that work with the federal funded programs know, we would never be able to do blight busting, in my opinion, with federal dollars. And to prove that the money can come back. And now I can say to our Common Council, I can say to the elected officials, look, invest in this little fund. With city tax dollars, it will come back. So those kinds of creative strategies, I think, have really helped us think differently about how to attack this problem. So thanks.